So today, I want to talk about something that is really significant and something that is really important. It's something that we all want. It's something that we all need, but it's also something that we all struggle to find. I'm talking about inner peace. Now, maybe as you live your life in the world, you've heard this called a couple of different things. Maybe you've heard it called peace of mind. Some people call it mindfulness. Other people call it just a happy and peaceful life. These are things that we all want and we all are pursuing, but we can often find that this is something that's just hard to find at times. If you're a follower of Jesus here today, you may have heard it called the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. Now, however you refer to it, this inner peace is something that we all want, and I believe it's something that we all need, and that's why today, I'm going to tell you the secret to finding peace. Are you ready? We're going to find out what the secret to finding peace is. And I think this is really important. It's more important than ever because we live in a world that's constantly moving and it's constantly changing. In the world we live in today, it can be so hard to slow down, can't it? It can be so hard just to take the foot off our pedal and just slow down a little bit. It's hard to find peace and calm. It's hard to find rhythm because of all the chaos that we all experience on a regular basis. I mean, for example, just last week, I'd spent time putting my whole work week together. I had everything sorted out. I had everything scheduled. I had everything calendared and ready to go, all of my work stuff and all my family stuff. And then on Wednesday night, I got a text from Pastor Jonathan telling me that he was sick. And then on Thursday, I got a text from him saying, I'm too sick to prepare a message, and do you have time to write something and do a whole message from scratch? And I said, well, it's my 27th wedding anniversary, but sure, Jonathan. So I set about rearranging all of my work plans, right? I set about disrupting my family schedule and just moving some of the pieces around so that I could spend some hours writing a message, ironically, about finding inner peace. Pastor Jonathan is okay. You'll be glad to know. Hey, look, if we haven't met, my name is Dave. I'm part of the team here. And if this is your first time at Suncoast, your first time in a long time, or if you're a regular here, I just want to let you know right out of the gate that we are so glad that you've decided to spend part of your Sunday with us, whether that's happening on site or whether that's happening online. We are so glad that you're part of our church today. And you've come at a really good time because, as Pastor Jonathan said, we are in part 2 of a series called Prince of Peace, where we're exploring this title that Jesus had of being the Prince of Peace, and we're unpacking how his message of hope and peace literally changed the world. So why is peace so important? Why are we all searching for this inner peace? Well, I think part of the reason is that we live in a world that's either consumed by hustle, you know, that idea that we have to constantly be on the go, that we have to always be working multiple jobs, that we have to be burning the candle at both ends in order to be successful. That's one side of the world we live in. Or we live in a world that is so consumed by likes and subs and retweets and followers and fans and favorites that we get caught up determining our self-worth based on how many or how few of these we actually have. And then on top of all of these things, we all carry these devices around with us that mean we are constantly connected to the chaos of the world. We have constant reminders of all the things that we are missing out on a regular basis. And look, if an image like this is causing you stress right now, if an image like this is causing you to start getting some hives or something along that, there's probably a good chance that you need some inner peace right now. But it's not just visual reminders of the things that are going on in the world, right? It's not just the visual reminders, because we live in a world that is constantly trying to distract us and constantly trying to get our attention. We live in a world that's constantly trying to pull us away from the things that are important to us. There is so much that's vying for our attention, even when we try to spend quality time with the people we care about. The world has this way of just bringing us back in and distracting us, and bringing the chaos and distractions right into our pockets. Even those precious moments when we're trying to find some peace and quiet, in so many ways, we have been outsmarted by our smartphones. So how do we get this peace? Well, it might surprise some of you to know that the Bible actually has a lot to say about peace and how we can find it. Just last week, Pastor Jonathan unpacked the Hebrew word for peace, which he told us was shalom. And he said specifically that shalom meant not just an absence of war or conflict, but it actually means wholeness. And like most Hebrew words, this word actually has multiple meanings, far more than just wholeness, far more than just peacefulness. It actually can also mean health and fullness. And importantly, shalom can refer to rest. This is something that Jesus specifically refers to when one of his closest friends named Matthew recorded Jesus one time telling his disciples this. He said to them, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens." I mean, it's kind of like Jesus just reads our emails and our texts, right? He understands how life is today. He understands that we are all weary. He understands that we all carry heavy burdens. This is what I think makes Jesus such an incredible teacher, because he puts his finger right on the issues that impact all of us every single day. I mean, honestly, how many of us feel weary right now? Yeah. How many of you get to the weekend just tired and in need of a break because you've been weighed down by so many burdens during the week? I think one of the reasons that Jesus says you should go to him if you feel like you're carrying more than you can handle is simply because he understands rest, and he says to us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Now remember that word rest is like that word shalom, which means peace. So if you are weighed down by the daily stress of work, or if you're carrying the load of unpaid bills, or maybe you're feeling weighed down and anxious by distractions, maybe the things that's holding you down, or that the weight that you're bearing is some relationships. If that's you today, then Jesus says that we can go to him to find rest and peace. And then in the very next verse, straight after this, Jesus tells us why we should go to him. He tells us his secret to finding inner peace. Are you all ready? Are you ready for this? Are you ready to hear what Jesus' secret for finding inner peace is? Well, he says this. He simply says, "Let me teach you." I'm keeping you in suspense a little bit. Let me teach you. He says, "Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle of heart, and you will find rest for your souls." You see, the secret to finding inner peace for our souls is to look to Jesus and look to his example of what it means to be humble and gentle of heart. Jesus is basically saying that humility is the doorway to peace. If you want to have inner peace, if you want to have peace of mind, if you want a rhythm of calmness, then you need to understand that humility is the doorway to that peace. You get it by being humble. And to understand what it means to be humble, Jesus says, just come and follow my example. You know, it's interesting, in fact, that humility, being humble, is the only character trait that Jesus ever proclaimed about himself. It's the only character trait he ever said that he had. And Jesus' idea that inner peace is found through humility is actually backed up by science. I know, right? Faith and science. Science is backing up something Jesus said. It's actually true. Richard Carlson, a psychotherapist and author and the best-selling author of the book Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, he wrote this in his multi-best-selling book. He said, humility and inner peace go hand in hand. Now, why do humility and peace go hand in hand? Well, he says, the less compelled you are to try to prove yourself to others, the less compelled you are to try to prove yourself to others, the easier it is to feel peaceful inside. So how do we become humble like Jesus? How do we live with this level of humility? Well, I think first we have to define humility. The Oxford Dictionary defines humility in this way: the quality of having a modest or low view of one's importance. Now, I don't know about you, that doesn't feel great for me. We're supposed to have a low view of ourselves. That doesn't feel right to me. And in fact, Christian author and theologian C.S. Lewis, he didn't think it felt right to him as well. And this definition, when he thought about this definition, he ended up writing this in a book called The Screwtape Letters. He wrote, by this method that we think lowly of ourselves, lowly of our own importance, by this method, we have been brought to think that humility means pretty women trying to believe they are ugly and clever men trying to believe they are fools. Now, he wrote this a long time ago, okay? But you see what he's saying. We're supposed to pretend we're something that we're not if we're supposed to have this dictionary definition of humility. C.S. Lewis's point is that humility is not thinking less of yourself. So what is it? What is humility? And more specifically, if the Bible has a lot to say about peace and about humility, what is the biblical definition of humility? Well, the Hebrew word that we translate as humility throughout the Bible is this. So there's your answer right there. We can pray now. Maybe you want to take a note on that. This is the word avona. I want everybody to say that with me. Avona. Ready? Go. Avona. I had a rabbi friend of mine once tell me that this word avona, this biblical definition of humility, means to occupy your God-given space in the world. Biblical humility is to occupy your God-given space in the world. Avona, humility, is not about overestimating yourself or your skills or your talent, but it's also not about underestimating yourself, your skills, or your talent. It's about taking up your God-given space in the world. Now, on the way in, you all got a circle. I want you to take it out right now. If you got a circle, take it out. If you didn't get a circle, I would love for you to put your hand up, and we're going to have somebody come around, and they're going to give you a circle. We've got one down here, a couple up the back, a couple over here as well. I hope you were forewarned, those of you who got the circle on the way in. I hope somebody told you that these are not communion wafers. I know they look like it, okay? It would be a bit tough, but the reason you got this circle, what I want you to do is this. If you got a circle, if you don't have it, just, again, put your hand up, and there's people going around right now. Over here over here, thank you, Chris. What I want you to do, if you've got a pen, why don't you just get that pen out, and on one side, just write the words, occupy my God-given space in the world. Occupy my God-given space in the world. Just write that on one side. If you don't have a pen, that's fine. You can write it later on. Now, while you've got this circle out, I want you to imagine that this circle is your life, okay? Imagine that this circle is your life. And everything that you do in your life, every conversation you have, every sporting achievement that you have, every relationship, with all of those things, you are coloring in the circle of your life, right? I want you to imagine that every conversation you have, every grade that you got in school, every relationship that you had, you're slowly starting to color in your circle. And maybe even everything you've ever thought about yourself, everything you were told as you were growing up, your circle gets filled up with all the experiences, all the education, all the times that you've had in your life that have made you who you are. That's what I want you to imagine doing right now. I want you to imagine that this circle is your life. And when it comes to this biblical definition of what it means to be humility, this is a picture of avona. This is a picture of somebody who's taking up their God-given space in the world, that everything they've done has colored right to the edges of the circle of their life. That's what avona looks like. That's what this biblical definition of humility looks like. Now, one of the alternatives to this biblical definition of humility, this avona, is people who color outside of the lines, right? People who just go over in certain areas of their life. And this is not always a negative, okay? Sometimes it's okay to have a little bit of pride in something that you're doing. Maybe you have a higher than average skill in a certain area, and it's okay that maybe in some spots you can color outside of the lines. Maybe you color outside the lines in just a little bit of areas because you've got, sporting prowess, or you've got business acumen, or you've been blessed with physical beauty or intelligence, or maybe you're a gifted musician or a gifted artist, and you just know in certain areas of my life, I'm a little bit better than the average person. We call this pride. And pride is just having this higher than normal self-esteem in one or two areas that, again, it's not always a bad thing. We can all be like this sometimes, can't we? In some areas, we can all be a little bit like this. But then there are people who consistently color outside of the lines. They consistently go way over their God-given space in the world. And we call that arrogance. We call that arrogance. Arrogance is this inflated opinion that some people have about their abilities or their possessions. It's people who exaggerate their importance or their talent, or they think that they're just better than anyone else. They think their opinion is always the right one. So they don't listen to the opinions of other people, and they can often look down on other people, especially people who they think are beneath them. Arrogant people can't admit that they're wrong. They think they're always right, so therefore they don't listen. Arrogant people, in fact, color so far outside the lines that they'll often push people away. They'll often make other people feel less than. They'll make other people feel smaller than what they are. They'll belittle other people, and what eventually happens is they end up driving people away. First, they make people feel small, and then they start to push people away altogether. They color so far out of the lines that sometimes they start to color into the circles of other people and cause chaos in their life. Now, luckily, there are not many people who are like this. In fact, I would say this, in Australia, most of us are actually the opposite of that. Instead of taking up way too much space, we actually take up the smallest amount of space possible. We take up a tiny little piece of space, and our circle might look something like this, where it's just small. And we want to hide ourselves away. And the reality is this can be as detrimental as coloring way far out the lines, especially to our sense of inner peace. We call this low self-esteem. And in situations like this, it's easy for us to be constantly belittling ourselves, downplaying our experience, downplaying or apologizing for our education or for our skills. If you've ever felt like you needed to engage in hiding your achievements or minimizing your experience or your education, if you've ever apologized for your success, then your circle might look a little bit like this one. And that's not a great thing either. Living like this is also detrimental to your inner peace. It's not a healthy way to live. It's not healthy to live your life trying to take up the smallest space possible. Anava is about, this biblical form of humility is about being comfortable with your God-given space in the world. But living like this sometimes happens because of a thing in Australia called tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppy syndrome is that attitude that a culture, a society, a country can have to criticize or cut down successful people. Instead of celebrating everybody's achievements, we cut them down. We make them feel small so that we can feel better about ourselves. Usually what starts to happen is we might start to gossip about the people who are having all this level of success. We might start to say things like, well, they're getting a bit too big for their boots, aren't they? Such an Australian thing to say. Or we might start forming little huddles and asking questions about that other person, saying, who do they think they are? Really? Come on. Arrogant people start to see someone else's success as almost like a personal slight against them. And when that starts to happen, we start to ignore their achievements and their experience, or we tell everybody that that only happened because they just got lucky. I could have had that success, but they got lucky. And this tall poppy syndrome doesn't just affect us as individuals. It doesn't just affect our own inner peace as an individual. It actually starts to impact the whole community. A study done in 2018 of people who lived in Australia showed that 81% of people experience hostility because of their success. This is hostility from their friend groups, the people who are closest to them, the people who should have been cheering them on and supporting them. 81% said they actually experienced hostility because of their success. 69% said they were negatively impacted by tall poppy syndrome on a regular basis. And 60% of people who live in Australia said they feared sharing their achievements with anyone. This is not healthy. Can I be really clear about two things? I want to be really clear about two things when it comes to tall poppy syndrome. First of all, taking up the smallest possible space is not humility. It's certainly not biblical humility. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Right. And the second thing I want to say is this, and this is really just for the Christians who are here in the room or who are watching online. If you're here today and you're just kicking the tires of church, you're kicking the tires of faith, and you haven't really made a decision to follow Jesus yet, you came along because somebody promised you lunch afterwards, or you're watching online because you lost a bet. If that's you today, you can check out for just a minute, okay? I just want to speak to just the Christians who are in the room. And I want to say this to you guys, so listen up. If there's one place where tall poppy syndrome should not exist, it's in the church. Tall poppy syndrome should not exist in the church. If we say we follow Jesus, and if we believe that this church is part of God's family, then we have to be for everyone. This is not a place where we gossip. This is not a place where we belittle or minimize other people or downplay their achievements. That's not how this is supposed to happen. 60% of people may fear sharing their faith in the world, but not in here. This is the place where we share our achievements, where we celebrate each other. The church is supposed to be a place where people are encouraged to be the best version of themselves, right? This is what we're here for. This is supposed to be a place where we cheer other people on so that they can become all that God has called them to be. This is the place where we support people to take up their God-given space in the world. That's what this is about. Jesus didn't come to give someone life to the full just so you could come along and minimize them, to make yourself feel better, to make yourself not so ashamed. Jesus went on and he said that a thief comes to steal and destroy someone's life, so don't be a thief. Don't be a thief. Don't steal away somebody's God-given space in the world just so you feel better. Biblical humility is about recognizing that the God who created the stars, who created the oceans, who created every single sunset, has made you and created you with a purpose. But he also created the person next to you with a purpose and a place in the world that only they can fulfill. So can we make a pact? Can we make an agreement, all the Christians, all the followers of Jesus in the room, can we make a pact right now that we will not minimize people, that we will help the people around us color to the very edges of their circle? Can we make turn to the person next to you right now and make a little pinky promise with them? That's it. Just make a little pinky promise and say, I'm going to make this pact right now that I'm going to help you color to the very edges of your circle, that I'm going to help you and cheer you on as you take up all the space that God has created and set aside just for you. I think we need to make that pact on a regular basis, and we need to not put up with it when somebody comes along and starts minimizing somebody else's experience or education or colors so far out of the lines that they push them away. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't speak the truth in love. It doesn't mean that we don't give feedback to other people. We have a feedback culture here at Suncoast. Everything that happens on a Sunday gets feedback. I know that as soon as I walk off this stage, Jonathan and a few other pastors and people are going to give me feedback on this message because we want to speak the truth in love. We want everybody to get better. But they do that because they want to help me color to the outside of my God-given space in this world. It doesn't mean we don't do those things. It just means that we don't criticize and tear other people down just because their circle doesn't look like our circle. That's the pact I wanted us to make. We shouldn't make somebody else feel smaller just so we can feel bigger. We have to be better than that. We have to be better than that. And this is not just a Christian thing, yeah? This is just a thing. This is just something that everybody should adhere to. We should all be making this level of pact. Because if you want inner peace, you have to stop creating chaos for the people around you. If you want inner peace for yourself, you can't create chaos for others. You have to stop comparing and assuming that your ways, your ideas are the best. You see, pride and arrogance are concerned with who is right. But humility and peace are concerned with what is right. Prideful and arrogant people are concerned that they're right. It's all about who is right. But we are supposed to be all about what is right and doing what is right for the people around us. So we've covered a lot today in just a short period of time. We discussed how humility is the doorway to inner peace and happiness. And we talked about how if you want a life that is free from chaos and turmoil, if you want to take up your God-given space in the world, then you don't live so far outside your circle that you start to color in somebody else's circle and start to push them away, because that only creates chaos for them. But you also don't live so inside your circle that you don't fulfill your God-given purpose. You don't live in such a small little circle that other people have to pick up the slack and color in part of your circle for you. Because when you do that, not only do you not fulfill your purpose, but you actually don't become the best version of yourself. You know, it's interesting, as I was processing some of this stuff over the last couple of days, what I started to realize was that Jesus had the opportunity to do both things. He had the opportunity to color way outside of his circle, and he had the opportunity to color a really small little circle. See, there's a story that we find in the Bible where Jesus is offered political influence over every kingdom on the earth. But he realized in that moment that that would mean coloring way outside of his circle. That was not his God-given space in the world. It would go so far out of that that he rejected that offer. He turned that away and said, that's not for me because I don't want to color outside of the space that God has given me to color in. And then, later on, towards the end of his ministry, in fact, right just before the very first Easter, Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, just outside of Jerusalem. And he was praying to God. And he was basically asking God to reduce the size of his God-given space in the world. He was asking God, would it be okay if I just colored in just a little bit? Because if I just color in just the smallest little bit amount of this circle, then I won't have to go through the pain that I'm about to go through. I won't have to face the most horrific death that I could possibly face. But in humility, Jesus accepted his space in the world. He found inner peace that allowed him to boldly step in to fulfill the purpose that God had given him, to sacrifice himself on our behalf. And that's why anyone who's searching for this inner peace can go to Jesus. Because he is the perfect example of godly humility. And in him you will find rest and you will find peace. And if you do that, you'll learn, like a lot of the people in this room have learned, like a lot of the people who are watching online have learned, that the peace Jesus offers will help you deal with the chaos in the world. Because the sort of peace that Jesus offers, that sort of peace, doesn't mean you won't have problems. It just means that your problems won't have you. It doesn't mean you won't have problems when you find Jesus' peace. It just means that your problems won't have you. Before I pray, I'm just super aware that the hands that went up about feeling anxious in the world and carrying a heavy burden, that there's people here today who are dealing with stress and they're dealing with anxiety, and I would like to take a moment to pray for you. I would love to take a moment just to ask God to fill you with this inner peace that only he can provide. And you might be sitting here today going, Dave, I don't know if I believe everything that you believe. I'm not sure if I agree with you about the Bible. I'm not sure if Jesus was a guy that even existed. And we can have that conversation a whole other time, okay? But just in this moment, what I'd love to do is just to talk to God on your behalf and ask him to start showing you how to find this peace, for him to start showing you how to find this humility that will lead to inner peace that surpasses all understanding. And so I'm going to ask everybody who's a Christian in the room, everybody who's already a follower of Jesus, just to put your head down, and we're going to talk to God in just a moment. But if today, I'm not asking you to make a lifelong commitment. I'm just wondering if today you feel like you need somebody just to pray for you, just to say, God, can I have some of this peace that I've been hearing about? God, can you show me how to humble myself and live that sort of life that your son Jesus lived? If you'd like me to pray for you and for God to help you carry whatever burdens you have, just shoot up your hand real quick, and I'm just going to say a really quick prayer. Okay, I see those hands. I see all those hands. See that hand as well. Thank you. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to pray for you. And here's the thing. This is not about you making a big commitment or anything like that. And it's just really about having somebody talk to God on your behalf, because I believe that God saw those hands go up. I believe in a God who saw every single hand and knows every single story and wants to bring peace to every single person who needs it and wants to help bear that load that you have. You know, one of the other meanings for that word shalom, that word for peace, actually means to take two ropes and tie them around something that's heavy to help you carry that load. And so I believe in a God who wants to help you carry that load today. And that's why I want to pray for you. So just one more time, if you haven't put your hand up yet, I just want to give you one more chance to do that. And I'm going to pray for each of you. I see all of those hands. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, let's all pray together. And if this is your first time praying, just receive this prayer and just maybe repeat it back to yourself in the quietness of your own heart and your own mind. God, I just want to thank you so much that you sent your Son as the perfect example of humility so that he could bring us peace, wholeness, fullness, and rest. And God, I want to pray right now for everybody who raised their hand. God, I thank you that you're a God who knows all of their burdens. You know everything that they're carrying. You know all of their pain points and where all of their stress comes from. And so, God, I want to pray that right now you would supernaturally just bring peace into their life. Bring peace into that situation. Bring peace into that job stress. Bring peace, God, into that house that's dealing with turmoil and tension right now. God, would you bring peace to that relationship that somebody raised their hand for where they're feeling stressed, they're feeling taken advantage of? Would you bring peace into that situation? God, would you help us all to humble ourselves and to reach out and call out to you, the Prince of Peace, to bring that level of wholeness, that level of fullness, that level of rest, that level of mindfulness, that level of joy and happiness and gratefulness into each of our lives. And would you do something next week that would remind us of that? And we pray all of this in the amazing, calming, peaceful name of Jesus. And everybody said, amen. Here's what I want you to do, guys. We're going to continue this series next week with part 3 of Prince of Peace, and we're going to be hearing from the amazing Allison. She's one of our teaching pastors here, and she's going to bring an awesome message. But what I would like you to do is just take that circle home. Right on one side, occupy my God-given space in the world, and then on the other side, just color it in where you think you're at right now when it comes to humility, when it comes to that biblical definition of humility. And then place that somewhere where you'll see it on a regular basis as a reminder of the sort of peace that only Jesus can bring. Thanks, guys.